hello, and welcome to the Unhinged Binge, wherein I and occasionally my current co host Kurt talk about Friday the 13th. This episode, we have decided to go with part two because last time we did part one, and that's generally how these things work with numbers and all. We're also going to be talking about the 1981 film The Burning because I thought that would be interesting to compare the two. Hello, Kurt. How are you today?
I'm not too bad. Thanks for having me on again. This is I was a little confused when you added another movie to the mix, but after seeing now I understand.
I feel like it makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Sometimes I got this.
Yep.
Sometimes.
I should never doubt you. I should know that by now.
No. I'm an easy person to question. I say ludicrous things. That's why I call it unhinged.
But when it comes to this kind of stuff, you're usually right.
Oh yeah, I know my horror movies. I got the one thing going for me.
Yep.
So now this was your first time seeing both of these?
Correct. And actually, I didn't even know what The Burning was until you told me about it, saying that we were going to watch both Friday Part 2 and The Burning. And yeah, like I said on the first episode, I'd only seen the first Friday, the remake, and Freddy vs. Jason. Just didn't continue with the franchise for whatever reason, but now I have a good reason to, so I can do this with you. So yeah, I have no history with either of these movies whatsoever.
All right, this is gonna be interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so I definitely grew up with the Friday the 13th franchise. I didn't see The Burning until a few years ago. So I guess I'll just go ahead and start and explain. Obviously, Friday the 13th Part 1 came out in 1980 and made a considerable amount on the box office, especially compared to its pretty measly budget. So Paramount, the parent company, and a smaller financial company that was also involved really wanted to make another one because that's how money works. It's basically these horror movies are like printing money, honestly, because they are so low budget. It's so easy to get a return on the investment. And horror movie sequels are nothing new. That's pretty standard. However, slasher sequels are pretty new. And 1981 did give us Halloween Part 2 as well as Friday the 13th Part 2. So this was really this year was kind of the deciding factor on what a slasher sequel was going to look like. And I think Halloween 2 and Friday the 13th kind of did similar things. So with Friday the 13th 2, we're getting our previous producer to come in and to direct because our previous director thought bringing Jason back, which was, I can't find who decided to do that. I can't find any background information on it. It seemed like that was always what they wanted to do for part 2. This is like pre-script. This is pre-everything. This is like studio saying, let's bring Jason in. We'll hire someone to write the script. That's what we want to do.
So the writer, if I remember correctly, was it the writer of the original one that did not want to bring Jason back? Am I correct in that?
So the director and the writer. Victor
Okay.
Miller and Sean S. Cunningham were both like, that's... One of them specifically said, that's dumb, he's dead. And I believe that was Miller, the writer. The writer for this film is Ron Kurtz. And I have read on IMDb or Wikipedia or something, maybe even heard it on a back. It's something I heard of passing a long time ago. I can't quite recall the source, but supposedly he might have had some a pass on the script from the original and like uncredited kind of revision for the original script for the first movie, and that's why he was sought after to do this one when Victor Miller passed.
Gotcha.
I do think it's great that we still get Harry Manfredini's score because that score is great though. Wait till you see 3.
I already kind of know about that. I know the main intro music.
Remix. So, it's so good. Sometimes I just play it.
I'm looking forward to that so much.
Now, of course, the reason I wanted you to watch The Burning is because Tom Savini also passed on doing this one. Instead, he wanted to go do The Burning. And I think because those films are both about the woods and, killers stalking people at a camp situation, I just thought it was kind of funny to compare them.
Yeah. So is the Tom Savini thing that was that the main reason you wanted to compare them, or was there other things too?
Both, also the camp setting.
Yeah. So I didn't know about the Tom Savini thing when you first told me that we were going to be watching both movies, but now again it makes sense after watching both of them. And I think there's a couple. I'm sure we'll get to the other like really oddly similar things that they both have, but yeah, it's really weird because they came out like a week apart, right?
Yes, they did come out 1 week apart. Friday the 13th, part 2 came out May 1st, 1981, and The Burning came out May 8th,
Right.
1981.
Okay. So
However, do you know the background for The Burning? Because it's
no,
kind of
I
interesting.
don't.
So it was originally, I'm sorry, so The Burning is about an urban legend, Cropsey. Are you familiar with Cropsey?
Nope.
Okay. So there's probably most famous a documentary from maybe like 2008, 2009 about Cropsey. And he is kind of a local urban legend for New York. So it's one of those, I don't know, there was an asylum that has closed down and some kids had been murdered. So they were like, maybe one of they weren't escaped, they were transferred, but in kids' minds, escaped mental patients like have gone around and killed these children, and that was just like kind of a pervasive like urban legend in like the late 70s, late 70s,
Early 80s.
to mid 80s.
Oh man. Okay.
The real life murderer of these children wasn't actually caught until 1988, so clearly
wow.
after this film was made. But there are a few movies about the Cropsey urban legend. But this movie was originally devised as a 5-page treatment by horrible human being Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
In 1979. So actually, it was submitted to the Writers Guild before even the first Friday the 13th script was. So this was in the works before the first Friday the 13th. And I imagine,
Okay.
I imagine once they get their actual script and the name of the movie and all that out there, the first Friday the 13th has already come out. And if I'm the people working on this movie, I'm going, oh shit. But then to get Tom Savini to come and do your stuff, I feel like they had to have been in on it. Like they had to okay, we're gonna get the guy who did theirs because we're basically making the same movie.
Yeah.
So we might as well just go all in on the bit.
Yeah, that's a crazy story. I didn't know that it was based off something real.
Well, loosely inspired, I think,
Right.
the nicest way to put it.
Sure.
I mean, really, the name is the only thing in common because it's not like these things happened at a camp or anything. But it did actually kind of force this other movie, Don't Go Into the Woods, was originally going to be called The Burning, but they had to change their name because this movie got to it first. Don't Go Into the Woods is one of the worst, like quality-wise, one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Like frame, yeah, let's have things in focus. Let's have, characters, I mean, everything about this movie is bad, but the sound design was hilarious. The killer goes around. You've probably never seen Suburban Sasquatch, but it has this repetitive noise of and he just keeps going around making the exact same recycled sound effect. It's so bad.
Awful.
And it also caused another movie called Madman, which was also originally about Cropsey, also coming out in 1981. All three of these movies did.
Wow.
Have to change. I think they changed the killer's name to Madman Marks, something like that. That's also like a really bad quality movie. Like these don't have very good like restorations or anything. But if you want to watch movies about people who go into the woods and die, there you go. I just mentioned a whole bunch of them.
And they're all from 1981, right?
Yes.
That's crazy.
So that's like might be 1980.
Oh, okay. So the early 80s is like the peak of woods movies.
Yes. But The Burning stands out as being radically different than all of them. Did you catch maybe why that might be?
No, I don't know what you're referring to.
It's actually a camp that's open with kids, showing them doing fun camp activity.
Somehow I didn't even notice that, but you're absolutely right.
The only other
You're
one
never
that does
open.
that
Yeah.
is Sleepaway Camp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've seen that, by the way.
I mean, I think that's the quintessential camp movie.
Yeah. What year is that one? 83?
Maybe.
I'm pretty good at movie release dates. So.
I'm not. I'd have to look it up.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into Friday the 13th Part 2. We're going to talk about the plot. But I'm sorry, before that, I do want to hit the tagline because I love these taglines for these ones. It's the kill count continues.
Nice.
Accurate.
By the way, I just want to say in your 1981 in horror video, I love the way you read the taglines. I thought that was really fun.
I try to do a voice, but
I like the voice.
This is all my voice does, so
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what I'm trying. Maybe
It
I
was
should
fun.
do it in an accent.
It was a nice little touch. Here, try an accent. Sure, why not?
Thanks. One of those had like a tag paragraph. It was like
Oh
that
God,
long. It's ridiculous.
that's not really a tagline. Yeah, that's way too
No,
much.
it's like a tome. Okay. So the cast, I don't think is anything super notable. I don't think anyone in the cast is really like famous. I mean, compared to like The Burbs, where we have like Jason Alexander and Holly Hunter.
Wait. Did you just say The Burbs?
I did say The Burbs. The Burning.
The Burning.
Thank you for the
Yeah.
correction. The Burning, where we have Jason Alexander. Fisher Stevens is so little in that movie. It's so wild. I didn't even recognize him until I read his name. I was like, wait, what?
Holly Hunter is in that as well, right?
Yeah. Yep, Holly Hunter. I don't know if you know Leigh Ayres. She's in one of my all-time favorite films, Bloodsport.
Nope, I don't. Which character was that?
Michelle, the other counselor.
Okay, yeah. No, I don't think I've seen her anything else. I haven't seen Bloodsport, so.
Brian Backer, he's Alfred. He's also in a seminal film, really, Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol. Important film to cinema history, really.
Okay.
Love Police Academy. Anyway, the Friday the 13th Part 2 is people you may or may not recognize. Probably, I'm sure a lot of these people, like The Burning, a lot of those people, you'll probably find them in 80s and 90s television all over the place, but probably not people you'd see being super, super famous. Most importantly, we do have Crazy Ralph returning, and in our opening scene, we do have Adrienne King coming back as Alice Hardy.
Can you talk about the stalking thing with her?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's two different stories. This is the one that I just assume to be true because whenever someone doesn't come back or they're only in a brief appearance, someone's going to say it has something to do with money, and I always just feel like that's usually actually not the case when it's someone outside of the person explaining themselves.
Right.
It's just some other person saying, well, it's money. But when, she tells her story, she's and other people as back this up, is that she did have a pretty intense stalker after the release of the first film, and she was, I think at that point, just kind of over the filmmaking thing. Like, and I can imagine like your first big movie and you get this really negative situation from it, and she didn't really go on to do that much else. So I would stand to guess that really was the reason, that she just really didn't want to come back to do this. So she came back, I think, for a day to be killed off in the opening. Is my understanding of the situation.
Okay, so I don't usually like when movie franchises do that, when they kill off the survivor of the previous movie, the opening scene. Alien 3, I think, is the most egregious. But I didn't know about the stalker story until after I watched the movie. So I was like, oh man, why'd they do that? And I'm like, okay, that makes perfect sense.
And it's also, I mean, the opening to me begs some questions. So it's our opening. It's supposed to be 2 months after the previous film.
Right.
Okay. And we get adult Jason Voorhees apparently alive and well.
Which makes no sense.
It makes no sense. It doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know what he's been doing the last, 22 years he's been alive.
And they say he saw his mom get killed. So, why didn't he do anything? Why didn't he, go to her and talk to her? It's strange, but,
I mean, my question is, we know that she's been, wandering around the woods since he died to make sure the camp stays closed. Why didn't he come to her any of those other times?
Exactly.
My theory is he was raised by Crazy Ralph.
Oh.
It's not a good theory. It's just the only thing I have.
It's a fun theory, though. I like it.
It's literally from a lack of anything else available.
That's in my headcanon now. I like it.
Our previous final girl, Alice Hardy, is asleep on her bed, and we are treated I use that loosely, to like a 10-minute. She relived the whole third act of the previous film.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure we necessarily needed all of that.
Don't love that. Yeah, it's like we know. Like I just watched it the other day. But.
I didn't write down the name of the book. It's See Hear Cut Kill. I'll have to write the name of it down in the description, but there's this book and he talks about Friday the 13th from a very mechanical way, like a little bit too mechanical, really. I couldn't even get into it, which is weird. But a lot of what he discusses in the book is about how the Friday the 13th franchise is serialized. And I do think, kind of compared to a lot of other big horror movie franchises, I do think that this one kind of tried to stick to continuity more than any of the others, which is weird. Like Halloween, it tried for 2 movies and then said, fuck it, we'll do something else. And then just went off the rails and is now a map of confusion and sadness and tragedy. Mm-hmm. Then Nightmare on Elm Street, better, but not great. But this, you'll see through the franchise, particularly with the openings, how each opening really does try to relate back to the previous film or films, and in just a little bit of a better way. The timeline does get weird right off the bat, starting now, because after we have Jason kill Alice Hardy, we're jumping 5 years ahead.
5 years.
So now we're in 1984, but the movie came out in 1981. Sure, why not?
And I don't understand why they had to do that either. That didn't feel necessary at all. Like, why the 5-year jump?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess they needed. I got nothing.
Yeah,
I got nothing. I guess because they figured that, I don't know, no one would want to open anything there, but like people live there at the town. Right. It's confusing.
Very.
Who knows? I did think it was nice that Jason took the kettle off the stove.
That was nice. I noticed that too. Yep. Or maybe it was just annoying him, and he's like, "All right, enough of that."
I assume he didn't want it to boil over to alert the neighbors. That way he had time to.
That's probably it.
Cover up the evidence, because we'll learn later that Alice Hardy was not confirmed dead. She disappeared, though there was a lot of blood. So I don't know what he did with her body.
Yeah.
Maybe he took it back to his cabin. Also, how did he get to wherever she lives and then back to Camp Crystal Lake? Like, did he hitchhike? Did he walk? I got questions. I got lots of questions.
Well, he had 5 years to do it, so I'm sure he could figure it out.
It would be hilarious if that was like his Forrest Gump, just like walking across the country and then walking back.
I'd watch that. That'd be fun.
It'd be ridiculous. I'm into it, though. So then we cut to, it's 5 years in the future. I'm assuming July 13th, 1984, based on me Googling a 1984 calendar and seeing that was when the Friday the 13th was. We are going to be set at Packanack Lodge, wherein Paul Holt, my hero. I don't know if you read my notes, but I made a lot of Paul
I read all your notes, yes. Quickly, but I did read all of it.
I made a lot of Paul Holt references. Good thing you didn't read the burning one, because I made even more in there.
You should have sent those to me too. I would have read those.
I usually upload them when I upload the videos.
Okay.
Just for funsies, because my notes are ridiculous. But we have Paul Holt, and he has, and I don't know how this makes sense, but I'm going to go with it. He has a camp counseling training center, because sure, why not? So I guess that's a good way to say we're not trying to open another camp here. This is a different location. Right. We're only going to have people, I'm assuming, in their late teens or early 20s here to be training to be counselors. So right off the bat, we don't have to have anything related to children. Smart. Comparatively, The Burning has a lot of teenagers and 20-somethings playing people who are probably younger than them. But we do actually have kids. We do see them doing activities that children would do.
Right.
Like softball and canoeing.
Canoeing, yep.
Yeah, why not? Although, I will say, compared to the first movie, Friday the 13th Part 2, the acting is a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And the characters seem like they have a lot more chemistry.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I,
I still didn't think most of them were super memorable to me, but the acting was a little better.
did you see Paul Holt?
Paul was one of the exceptions. Yes.
So we open with two people, Jeff and Sandra, driving up to I guess Crystal Lake, the town. They used a payphone to call Ted, who is going to be our prankster,
Mm-hmm.
because all of these movies
Always
need
got to
your
have a prankster.
yes. I assume that is the reason for this is you want to have like fake out scares. And the best way to do that is to have a prankster doing some kind of joke.
Right.
And I guess that makes sense. However, I'm just like I've said this before, man, if that person was my friend, it'd be a day. And then I'd never want to talk to that person again. I'm still not over the arrow scene from the last movie. But anyway, Crazy Ralph comes up and he goes, you're doomed. You're all doomed. Harbinger of doom thing. Yes, Crazy Ralph, we get it. Move on. Get a new hobby. Their truck gets towed, which I thought was really funny. Ted had what would you call him? Gas station attendant, Max, tow their vehicle. Now, Max is actually played by Cliff Cundy, who is the stunt coordinator, which I think was kind of interesting. I love it when when you have a crew that's so small, your behind the scene people end up, coming on screen to do stuff. I like that. Question mark. Okay. So
I'm having some issues again, so hold on.
Moving forward, we have a tree that goes down in the middle of the road, which apparently looks like someone dragged it there. And we're going back to our POV shots, which we had from the previous film, which I kind of like. Okay, so we had a slight pause. Don't remember what I was talking about, but something blah, blah, blah. There's a tree down in the middle of the road. Sandra goes off looking in the woods, and we get our POV shots, which is a resumption. That's a word, I think. We're doing
Sure.
POV shots again, like we did in the first film, which The Burning also did. I make a lot of jokes about Vaseline lens, but something I thought was really hilarious in The Burning is to get this effect of having the POV vision be kind of blurry. They actually literally put Vaseline on the lens.
I kind of love that, by the way. I thought that was cool because he has the goggles and stuff. So I thought that was a nice touch.
I do too. However, I think it becomes less effective when they did a lot of day for night shots.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought some of it was a little difficult to decipher, even when we're not doing Vaseline lens, which this movie,
sure,
Friday the 13th Part 2, clearly had a bigger budget and I think looks a lot nicer, like significantly so. Although we'll talk about the kill scenes momentarily.
Did part two get a bigger budget than the first one? Because
the
first one
like
with money?
More than double. More than double.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, it was still only like $1 million, but yeah, significantly more.
Yep.
Okay, so Sandra sees a sign for Camp Crystal Lake. Ted calls it Camp Blood. And all right, we're already getting into maybe this is a little bit of a tricky situation. Maybe something bad happens. We'll learn more later. Intro Paul Holt. I gosh darn love Paul Holt. He's great. Yep. He's one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise. Long live Paul Holt. He summons some youths to his teen counseling thing so he can give them a speech. So our group of teens are going to be Ted, the prankster, Jeff and Sandra, the couple, Terry, Vicky, her dog Muffin. I don't know why I felt that was important, but I did.
Dogs are important. Thank you.
Scott, Mark, and then Jenny Fields, who arrives a little late, is one of the older people. She's kind of like Paul's right-hand man sort of thing. And I know she's studying to be a child psychologist. I think she'll make a terrible one, but that's later. Clearly, much like last time with Alice and Steve Christie, Paul and Jenny kind of have some romantic entanglement.
For sure.
And I think it's cute. I like them.
Me too. I think they have good chemistry. Yeah, I like them a lot.
I also like Jeff and Sandra. I thought they were pretty great as well. Not oh, we'll later we'll have Vicky. Yes, Vicky and Mark. I thought they were also adorable. It was Scott and Terry that were a little bit of the problem. Scott was really trying. Terry did not care. Comparatively, with The Burning, man, these boys are perverts in The Burning.
Yes.
Not cute.
Well, I actually just missed a little bit of what you said. I don't know if it was my end or yours, but yeah, the thing about the characters in The Burning is that there's a couple of them that are like so shitty that you just can't wait to see them die. And to me, that is better than being forgettable. So like when you want someone to die so bad, they're at least memorable for that. Like there's one also in the Friday the 13th remake, which we'll get to, that really stands out like that. But I like when movies do that, because then you're rooting for the killer, like, oh, this person has to die.
Yeah, I did root for Cropsy a few times. Well, actually, I wasn't rooting for Cropsy because I didn't like Cropsy. Cropsy to me is proto Freddy Krueger, where Cropsy was
Ooh.
kind of an asshole. Like he was not a good person, and the prank was the kids getting revenge on this person who was this adult who was mistreating them. And what do? They burn the dude alive. It's absolutely Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, I did notice a lot of parallels to Freddy, especially like with his first kill when he's like standing at the bottom of the stairs in the dark with the hat on. That like really read as Freddy to me. Oh,
Actually, that I felt was very giallo. A lot of Italian horror movies do that. That is absolutely straight from so many Italian horror films. With the black gloves and the boots. Very, very, very Italian horror. Italian horror really started doing slashers before the US really did.
Oh.
So a lot of what people in the US were doing kind of comes from what Italian horror films were doing a little before them, particularly with Dario Argento and Lucio Fulci.
And you like those ones, right?
No.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Oh, I always get confused which ones you like and don't like.
No, I'm not. I'm really not huge on most Italian horror. There's some that I like, you know, like Suspiria, Opera. I think those are pretty good. But overall, it's just not really my thing. You know, it's something I want to like. There are so many of them on my list. Like I've been watching them. I have a list dedicated to Italian horror films that I need to watch. A lot of them are kind of, I call them discount movies. So they're like the US rip-off versions of stuff. So like, for instance, Jaws, pretty famous, well-known movie. You get the Italian rip-off, The Last Shark, which actually I kind of liked. But then you get something like, you know, Lucio Fulci made Zombie, which is the Italian sequel to Night of the Living Dead.
Right.
And he and Romero actually, I think, became friends. If I'm not crazy, or they at least had some respect for one another's films. And I think Romero did end up liking Zombie. Zombie is a crazy movie. There's a scene in there. I don't know how they did it. There's a zombie fights a shark.
Whoa!
It's a prolonged underwater scene in the late 70s. It's actually pretty awesome.
That sounds awesome.
Yes. But then you get stuff like, there's a lot of like cannibal movies in Italy. Sure. I don't know why. I don't like any of them. They're all real gross. Real gross. If you've ever heard of the video Nasties.
It sounds familiar.
I talk about it a lot. So in the UK, there's a censorship board, or there was a censorship board, and they had certain films that they did not allow into their country because they felt they were too graphic. Some films could just be edited down. And this is kind of similar to other countries' censorship boards. Like in modern times, I would compare it to maybe like China's. Like if you edit this part out, we'll release it in our country. Stuff like that. But there was certain films, I think it was maybe like 79 or so, where that are completely banned. And for various reasons, almost all of them were Italian horror films. But actually, one of the earliest ones was The Burning.
Oh, wow.
And I think some movies, like if you were like found in possession, you could be like prosecuted and stuff. Like they're pretty serious about it.
Wow, that's crazy.
The US never quite got that weird or anything, but there are some, like we don't have the type of like censorship boards where you have to like edit down your film in order to get released here.
Right.
I can't think of a film that's been banned here. But we do have like internal, like not censorship, but like internal ratings. So I'm sure there's stuff where it's like you could be released in whatever country you were made in perfectly fine, but if you wanted to get released here in an R rating, so you could actually be profitable, you might have to edit certain things down or out. Like I don't know what other countries do with like smoking, but I know in the US, if you're smoking heavily in a film, it's rated R automatically. So maybe in Italy, that's not something they do, but they might need to edit stuff down so it could be released here and be profitable. I don't know.
Gotcha.
How that works. That's you need to ask someone else. That's a brief description of internal censorship. Moving on. Okay. So I do like that they've already established, and I think this film does a lot of really great stuff in establishing. We've established Ginny's vehicle does not work well.
Right.
In any horror movie, you have, particularly because we've talked about this last time, horror movies often hinge on isolation. So you have to have a reason they can't go get help.
Right.
So oftentimes, the killer either breaks the car or the car doesn't work. It's a huge cliche in horror, particularly when we're out at the woods horror.
Yep.
In The Burning, I think they did even smarter. They went out to a heavily isolated area where you couldn't just walk back to get help. You had to take
canoes. Yep.
Yeah, so that's really smart. But then that brings up, how the fuck did Cropsy get there?
How did killers get places in these movies? I don't know.
Exactly. They must work out like crazy.
How do they move all these bodies too? So
yes.
quickly?
I wrote that down too.
Yep.
Well, anyway, moving on to Friday the 13th part 2, we get a great campfire story. And Kurt, I hope you liked Paul Holt's telling of this campfire story, because they're going to use it in future installments.
Okay. I'm fine with that. I enjoyed it. Well, something else is that there was like a very similar campfire story in The Burning, and they both involved someone like popping out in a costume. So I'm like, is that a coincidence? Or
I mean, it is a coincidence, but isn't it a funny one?
Yes. And they're both fun scenes in both movies.
Yeah. So Paul Holt tells the story of Jason. And so he recounts what happened with his mother, that he likely witnessed her murder, that Jason is an urban legend, out to get his revenge. We are setting up his motivation. We're getting a recap of the previous film. I really like this. I think it's great. We're establishing where in the timeline we are. And I think having Jason be this urban legend, this mythical figure, is a perfect thing to do, given the location of it being like a camp. Same thing with Cropsy. And I do think it's a little more interesting with Cropsy, because we'll learn at the end of the film that Todd, bless him, as I like to call him, Discount Paul, he was actually one. Yeah. He's actually one of the kids who played the prank on Cropsy and ended up burning him. So Cropsy's specifically going after him and just killing other kids in his way.
That makes sense.
Although I wasn't fully sure, because he also kills like randomly in New York. He goes all driller killer and murders a sex worker for reasons.
That was strange. Yeah, I didn't get that one at all.
Nah, I didn't get it. But with that, I guess we can go ahead and mention like the death scenes in these movies are dramatically different in terms of how they're shot, which I think is unfortunate.
I much preferred the kills in The Burning because of the way they were shot and Tom Savini's effects. So I felt like Friday Part 2, that element of it, I think you could definitely tell that it wasn't Tom Savini, at least in my case. Maybe it's kind of like, because I already knew, it's like confirmation bias, but it just seemed like watching those movies back to back, I noticed a pretty big difference.
So I don't know if you'd be interested to learn, but in the previous time we were talking about the first one, I mentioned the rating board.
Yeah.
At the time, the MPAA, now the MPA, had allowed it to be released with an R. And then a lot of films were like, well, Friday the 13th got an R and they did all this, so we should get an R too because, we're doing something similar. So after that, the MPA specifically with the Friday the 13th franchise required a lot of heavy cuts. And you'll see that kind of going on throughout. But with this film, oh God, it's been so long since I looked, but I mean, a lot of these were heavily edited. The death scenes, most of them went on longer, were a lot more graphic and bloody. Here they're really truncated and cut compared to the burning where they're a heavy focus.
They linger on them. Yeah. And I like that.
Yes, absolutely.
They really show off Tom Savini's effects in that movie.
Although I will say Tom Savini definitely wasn't using the good blood.
Oh,
the blood was a little too red.
Sure. Aside from that, though, really good. Oh shit, I forgot. Keep going.
Now I don't know if you caught that. Well, we'll talk about it later.
Okay. What?
There's so many. We'll talk about it later. Okay. So I as you mentioned, both of these campfire stories end with the kind of prankster of the group kind of jumping out in a mask to scare the fellow camping individuals, whether they be kids or counselors. Side note, was Jason Alexander supposed to be a nerd in The Burning? Because he does not play a nerd well. He seems like the coolest guy in school.
I'm not entirely sure, but I liked him. I thought he was pretty funny and cool.
He's charismatic. So, he stole the movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, he was awesome.
Anyway, back to Friday.
And I didn't know he was going to be in it when I watched it too. I'm like, oh cool, Jason Alexander.
I didn't want to mention anyone who was in it. I was just let be a surprise.
I like not knowing so I can do like the DiCaprio point at the screen. Oh, there's that person.
Okay, so back in Friday the 13th part 2. Okay, R.I.P. Muffin, because Muffin got. I really did not remember Jason killing any dogs, and now I need to retract my statement that Jason is superior to Michael.
Yeah, that pissed me off. And I left a comment on your video, like that's one of the things that really, really annoys me is killing dogs in movies. I'm like, oh God damn it. Why do they have to do that?
I saw worse in 1981. A lot of dogs
I'm sure you did. Yeah,
1981.
listening to you talk about those. Yeah, I have no interest in watching those other ones that you mentioned. I'm good. I hate it so much.
Ralph gets killed, which I think was a mistake. When we go through future installments, there's always going to be a discount Ralph, like the exact same Ralph, Crazy Ralph type character. I'm like, you should have just left Ralph alive.
Yeah, I didn't expect him to get killed. That was a big surprise for me because, like I said, I haven't seen any of the other like original run of Friday the 13th movies. So I just assumed that he would be around for the other movies to do the like warning.
I mean, basically he is. We're gonna always have a Harbinger of Doom in every movie, but yeah, I think that was a short-sighted error on their part. Although no Harbinger of Doom in The Burning. Although I guess that's what the campfire story is.
Yeah, I guess, but it's not quite the same though.
It's not. Okay, so later on, a cop comes by because Jeff and Sandra. There's so many teen names. I don't know what I was thinking doing this. So 2 of the teenagers go off to go to Camp Crystal Lake because they, want to see what it's like.
AKA Camp Blood. Yep.
Yes, because of the urban legends. Obviously, Paul Holt. Come on, you made him curious. That was your own fault. You should have thought about it. Anyway, so a cop comes down. He takes him back to camp. Paul Holt, being the awesome guy he is, because I love Paul Holt. He's a legend. He kind of dismisses them. The cop gets mad. He's like, what, you're not even going to reprimand them? And he, so off the cuff, just says, Ginny, no seconds on dessert for Jeff or Sandra.
That
Paul Holt doesn't give a fuck.
I love that dessert line. This scene was so funny. It was great.
Cop drives away, and as he's driving, I guess he saw something in the woods, and this inspires this man to go running best he can. God save this man. He's never done a day of cardio in his life. He really went out there to just go for it in these woods. And running in woods is not easy. Not as bad as running on the beach, but it's not easy. And he gets to this old structure. I know a lot of people call it a shack, but shack's a strong word. I'm going structure.
Sure, structure works.
Where we quickly come to realize this is where Jason has been living, I guess, since like 1958. So
Apparently.
yeah, for quite a long time. I guess he grew up here. And he ends up killing the cop. So in this movie, we have our final girl dead, and now we have 2 older men dead, which is kind of a weird position for a horror movie to do, where we're mostly getting women getting killed, and there's a lot more, I don't know if you noticed, there's a lot more nudity and a lot more sex happening in The Burning compared to Friday the 13th Part 2.
I did notice that. There is definitely some in Friday Part 2, but there was a lot in The Burning.
It's a lot more consensual Friday the 13th Part 2.
Oh, God, yeah. And that's kind of what I was referring to earlier with the couple guys that I really wanted to see get killed. It was Glazer and Eddie.
Well,
Fuck those guys.
Glazer, it was consensual. You could tell he really likes Sally and he respects her.
But she was telling him no, though, wasn't she?
No, Eddie's the one where
No,
Sally
they
kept
both.
telling Eddie no.
Wait, hold on.
Maybe I missed it.
I think they both had situations where they were getting told no and still continue. I'm
But
pretty
even
sure.
Alfred was a little pervert.
Yeah, I'm like walking around the shower and stuff. Yeah,
They're all
that's
problem.
Yes.
Except for Todd. Todd was fine. Todd was doing his best in a bad situation.
Yes.
I guess. Poor Todd. But what's important is, guys, don't worry. Don't worry. I'll tell you now. I'll be does the Paul Holt die.com. Paul Holt lives.
Does
Paul
he?
Holt lives. Question mark? Todd definitely lived.
Oh. How do you know?
Paul. We'll get to Paul's fate.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Right. Okay.
We'll get there. Okay, so Cop's dead, and we do now know that for whatever reason, Jason has been living in this cabin, which totally makes sense that he's alive and living in a cabin in the middle of the woods. Absolutely, definitely makes all of the sense.
Sure.
All sense made. No gaps in logic.
Don't ask questions. Yeah.
Questions? Who are those? We don't know her. Moving on. All right. I completely lost where I was in my notes. Oh, Jason's watching. Here's what's important. It's Friday the 13th. We're on Crystal Lake, and there's a full moon. All the stars have aligned for a murder spree. Maybe Jason just has to kill on a Friday the 13th during the summer on a full moon. No, because then he wasn't killing before. Well, that we know of. We'll learn a little bit more Jason backstory later on. Question mark on that, and question mark on who wrote it, because I'm gonna have more questions when that happens. Sadness. Okay. I'm just gonna cut. Most of these scenes aren't really important. People wandering around. The other counselors go to like a bar. It's called a casino, but it's a bar. I don't know why they call it a casino. I saw no gambling happen.
Yeah, I was confused about that when it said casino on the sign. I'm like, what? That's not a casino. It
really wasn't. So a whole bunch of the people go off, but Jeff and Sandra have to stay because they got in trouble. Mark decides he wants to stay. So that means the girl who's crushing on him, Vicky, decides to stay. And then I think Terry and Scott stay. I don't know. I think Terry wants to stay because she's looking for Muffin still, I guess. And then Scott stays because he's crushing on Terry, even though she doesn't give a shit about him. Great idea, I guess. Question mark. All right. Jason kills Scott. All right. It's brief. It happens. He's upside down. It's kind of funny. I absolutely love that he got I don't know what that trap is called. It's like the rope is set up, and then if you step on it, you get hung upside down.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called either. It's some kind of trap. Yeah, I don't know.
It's great. But I don't know if you noticed this. When he kills Scott, the guy clearly was holding the machete the wrong way. So the bladed part was towards the camera, and the dull side was going against Scott's throat.
No, I didn't notice that one
It
specifically.
happens twice.
Really? Oh my god, I didn't notice it either time.
Exact same thing. When he kills Mark and embeds the machete, it's backwards.
Really?
So yeah, the sharp end is facing out towards the camera,
God,
and the dull
I guess
end
it just they happen so fast that I didn't even realize it.
they are fast,
Yeah.
but it's hilarious. It cracks me up. Anyway, Terry, almost every horror movie has this where we get someone has been killed and then someone else goes and finds their dead body and is then killed.
Mhm.
It's just every slasher has that. I don't know why. It's just something that happens. But she's killed off screen. Not really much to say about that.
No.
R.I.P. Terry. Sorry for Muffin. I'm
Well,
glad she didn't find Muffin's body. That would have been
yeah,
sad.
agreed. I do have one thing to say about that though. She was the one that was skinny dipping, right?
Yes.
At night in the lake by yourself? No.
Okay, no one does that.
Yeah, terrible idea.
Absolutely no. And skinny dipping is very much a cliche in these particular types of horror films.
Definitely. Yes.
All right, so then we go to the bar where Ginny is talking to Ted and Paul about, she's armchair psychoanalyzing Jason. It's terrible. Like she's just way off. She asked if he would be grown now. Bitch, he's 38. Yes, he's an adult. And she's saying like, oh, he wouldn't have had any friends because he never went to school, as in homeschooled kids don't have friends. We know he went to camp.
Right.
Like, I don't know. She's just kind of way off the boat. But my thing here is she's talking about how much he must have loved his mother. Okay. So like my new theory is Jason, when he was 11 years old, faked his death to get away from his annoying mother.
Really?
And then he just decided to go live in the woods. And that's why Pamela never found him, because he didn't want to be found. But then when she gets killed, he did witness it. And he became so overwhelmed with guilt for, letting her go through this for all these years that it drove him crazy and he decided to murder. Now, why did he wait 5 years after killing the woman who killed his mother to start going on a killing spree? I don't know, but that's what happened.
So I like that theory. I mean, that would certainly explain why, he never like went to her, talked to her, tried to save her or anything. So that kind of makes sense.
I've put 5 minutes of thought into this, which is more than the writer.
And maybe that's 5 years was spent just trying to find his way back to Camp Crystal Lake.
Maybe I was right about the full moon. It has to be a full moon on Friday the 13th before he kills.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Wait, is that the case with all of the movies in the franchise?
I don't remember. I just know these two movies show a full moon.
Okay, guess we'll find out.
We will. Does this theory hold moon? We'll figure it out.
Looking forward to finding out.
Probably not, but they do have some. I thought this movie had a really good full moon shot.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Compared to the day for night shots in The Burning, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think also had a full moon. Maybe I remember that incorrectly.
I don't recall, but you might be right. I mean, you tend to notice this stuff more than I do, so you're probably right.
I just like a full moon shot, man.
Yeah, full moons are cool. Absolutely.
They do a good job of them.
I always like when I'm outside running at night and I see the full moon. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
No, because then I just think werewolves.
Oh, whatever.
I'm not here for the werewolves. And there's a thunderstorm now. Friday the 13th, full moon and a thunderstorm. Nothing good can happen. Nothing good can happen. So, we have the kids who are left at the camp kind of having a good time. Again, I do like that we get to kind of know these characters and kind of like them. They seem real and authentic youngsters having fun. I guess. I don't know if video games are. Those video games did not look fun that Mark and Vicky were trying to play, but all right.
Oh, that was it was a sport, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's like hockey.
Football. Or it was hockey. Yeah, it was hockey. Yeah.
The one with the puck. I don't know. She's trying to flirt. I'm like,
I did like them though. I thought they were cute.
I did too. But I'm deeply upset that Mark got killed so
Mm,
bad.
yeah. And he
Like,
goes
I'm
rolling
cool with
down the
him getting
stairs like, oh, that's
he got
brutal.
macheted in the face, which
Yep.
was good, although the machete was backwards. But
Mhm.
then he utilizes the wheelchair and he rolls down all the stairs. I'm like, you didn't have to do him that dirty. You
Yeah,
could have just killed him. Had
that
a
was
little dignity for it.
so fucked up. But also at the same time, like a good kill.
It
So
was. And then but it's this weird like freeze frame when he gets to the last step, and I'm assuming that's because I assume that like at the end the guy just like fell out. Because
yeah.
it's probably just like a stunt guy in
I
there.
was curious about that too, but that
I'm
makes
like, I'm
sense.
assuming the end of what happened when he rolled down the stairs could not be used.
Right.
So hard cut. I mean, hardest of cuts
Yes.
from the freeze frame of Mark's death to I'm thinking this is where Sandra is climaxing with her boyfriend Jeff and
Yeah.
Jason going upstairs to murder them. From what I understand, there was a lot more to this murder than what we see, which what we see is a spear going through both Jeff and Sandra. So it kills them kind of both in one go. And it's kind of a bloodless kill. This movie just had all its carnage ripped out of
I
it.
know. And do you know if those like the extended scenes are available anywhere?
I don't remember.
Okay, because
I was lazy and watched these on Max.
mhm.
I do own them, and I can't remember if they have the footage put back in or
Because
not.
man, I felt so cheated watching a lot of these kills. I'm like, oh, these could have been cool, a lot cooler if they showed more of it. Didn't cut away so quick.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yep.
I do think a lot of like Vinegar Syndrome when they put movies together, they do their best to put stuff back in. I can't remember who released these though. I'd have to look it
What do you mean? Who released him?
up. Sorry. So Vinegar Syndrome is just like a company like Shout Factory
Oh,
that well they do Scream Factory, but they put particularly focus on horror movies and
okay.
doing like restorations and getting stuff put back in. And they tend to have particularly I just know with horror movies because that's like all I watch. I don't know if they do other stuff. Do other types of movies exist? Who knows? And they tend to have really great like commentaries and like special what are those called, like extras
Special
on
features.
yeah, special features, there we go, thank you.
Yep.
On their Blu-rays and stuff. Yeah, so I would recommend if you're a fan of like an older horror movie and Vinegar Syndrome has released one, that's the edition to get.
Okay.
And their artwork, because they'll usually do artwork for the covers and stuff, is always off the chain,
Oh,
so good
cool.
looking. Yeah, so
Hell
they're
yeah.
really good. But with this one being kind of more of a mainstream, like bigger movie, I don't know if they would have had they would have released something
Okay.
or not, or like Paramount released them on Blu-ray or like
Well,
what they would have tried to put back in or not.
I'm
I
gonna
don't
try to
know.
look into it because I want to see if there's more out there. I want to see it.
Anyway. So back at the casino, Paul and Ginny go back to the cabin and Ted stays there, and that's the last we see of Ted. So hey, way to go. Drinking saved your life in a horror movie.
Yeah.
First time for everything. Yeah, I can't think of another instance in a horror movie off the top of my head where like the guy was drinking and that's what saved him.
Wait,
Kind
is
of
that the
hilarious.
last time we see him?
Yeah,
I never realized that. Huh,
he
that's
goes
funny.
he's trying to look for an after party and that's it. He
Yeah,
lived.
literally drinking saved his life.
I mean, could you imagine though? You wake up the next morning with like a horrible hangover
Mm,
and find out like most of your, coworkers have been brutally murdered.
yeah,
That's an awkward moment.
for
Anyway,
sure.
so Vicky kind of goes around looking for Mark. She goes upstairs. She finds Jason laying in bed with Sandra's dead body. Just very weird. He's hung Ted up next to the door. Don't know why he did that or how he had time to do that. We'll come back to the time thing in a minute. But he's wearing this like burlap sack from The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Are you familiar with that movie?
No.
That's a real life, or it's based on a real life murder, or series of murders. And I guess in real life, supposedly the guy wore like a burlap sack to like so people wouldn't be able to identify him in case he didn't actually kill them or something.
Okay.
But in the movie, which was made by the guy who made The Legend of Boggy Creek, and boy does it show. Yeah, the killer is wearing a burlap sack throughout the film, and this just seems like a total rip on that.
Oh,
Jason hasn't yet got the famous hockey mask yet.
right.
Anyway, so Jason murders poor Vicky, which gets him a total kill count of 8 people. I'm sorry, I can't count. 9 people in the movie, 8 people in the year of 1984 so far.
Right. Okay.
More on that later. So he has a total of 9 kills in the movie, 8 people in 1984. Moving on.
Wait. I sorry. I want to go back to one thing quick. You skipped the part where Vicky sprayed was it like perfume or whatever? She sprayed it on her,
Yes.
I thought that was really funny.
I did write that down too.
Yeah.
So Vicky's getting ready to be intimate with Mark, and she's spraying perfume, and she sprays it on her cleavage.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if anyone knows this, but perfume, if you've ever gotten it in your mouth, is really gross. And I just can't help feeling if you want to be intimate with someone, that's just not the taste you want to leave behind.
Yeah. I thought that was
I
so funny.
I had an instance where I was dating someone and they went tanning a lot. So they frequently left the taste of like tanning lotion. And I gotta tell you, it was terrible.
It sounds terrible. Yeah,
Terrible.
no, thank
Terrible,
you.
terrible, terrible. Sometimes it's good to have a shower before and after.
Absolutely.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, sorry, I had to talk about that because I just thought it was so funny.
I thought what was interesting is so when Jason is going after Vicky, they decided to put in focus the knife so that Vicky being further off is out of focus instead of doing maybe like a split diopter shot, which I think would have looked a lot better. Maybe it would have been a little bit more difficult, perhaps, but I think end
I'm sorry,
result would
hold
have
on.
looked a lot better.
A split what?
Split diopter. So generally speaking, if you're filming something or taking a photo, you'll have if you have something really close up to the lens, your lens will focus on that and everything else will be blurry.
Yeah.
Or if you focus really closely on something far away, everything else will be blurry around
Yep.
that. So I don't understand the mechanics of how cameras work, but there's a way to do it, and John Carpenter did this perfectly in The Thing. There's a very, very famous split diopter shot. You can probably just look it up, where you have something close up and far away, both completely in focus.
Oh, okay,
Um,
gotcha.
and
Which
there's just
shot was that in The Thing?
it's when someone's standing kind of so there's someone in a door, like a doorway, and there's someone in the room.
Okay.
I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, it doesn't
Right in
sound
the
familiar.
city.
I'm sure I'd recognize it when I watch the movie, but
You could just look up split diopter, The Thing.
or I
sure
could
you'll
just watch
find
The Thing
it.
again because it's so fucking good.
That's true too. So if you ever see something really close up to the camera and really far away, and they're both in focus, that's just a split diopter shot.
Got it.
Anyway, yeah. So I just thought it was really weird to leave Vicky out of focus and frame it on the knife, and then have her slowly come into focus. And I don't think that was like an artistic thing. I think that was just the cinematographer didn't know how to do anything else.
Right.
I'm not sure. I don't really know the cinematographer. Sadly, we did not have the graceful work of one Dean Cundy like the Halloween franchise did. This is what we get.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Paul and Ginny arrive back and start to notice things are amiss because everyone else is dead.
Yep.
So they go looking. Jenny finds a blood-soaked bed and they're like, okay, something is not right. I don't think this is just a prank. We'll look around. There's no power at one point in the cabins, and Jenny in the dark kind of sees someone in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jason comes up because that burlap sack is white. So obviously, even if you're in a dark room, it's going to be a little noticeable. So Jason ends up coming up with this spear, I think, and starts attacking Paul. Paul gets knocked out. Jenny goes for a run, and now we're at the last part of the movie. It's like a 15-minute chase scene compared to like the first movie where we have like a 30-minute chase scene, and at least this movie has two people being chased instead of just poor Alice. Jenny tries to fight him off. I think she's doing a pretty good job. She's being smart. She's trying her car. It doesn't work. She gets at one point she gets the chainsaw. I'm like, damn, okay.
Yep.
And I think it's really funny that it's shown that Jason's kind of a klutz. Like he stands on a chair to like dive with a pitchfork at her, but the chair collapses under his weight and then he falls and he breaks his pitchfork. And then when Jenny comes up with the chainsaw, he seems like legitimately kind of scares.
Oh, he was horrified of the chainsaw. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, falls,
I mean, who
which I
wouldn't
thought
be?
was kind of funny.
Yeah.
And but he keeps getting back up. This is a determined boy. Like he wants people to get killed. Paul comes back. Yeah, fucking Paul Holt. Love Paul Holt. And he fights with Jason again. Jenny ends up unmasking Jason, but we don't see him yet.
Right.
And this is after that she takes the machete and she kind of like embeds it between his shoulder and his neck pretty deep in. Like it looks like it goes down to his collarbone. I'm just guessing here. I don't know how anatomy works. That to me seems like, oh, you're gonna die. But I don't know how like supernatural evil entity anatomy works either.
Yeah, I mean, I still think they should have done more though. Like, I don't know, cut his head off or something. Like if it were me, I would do way more than that.
I mean,
just to be
this is
sure.
a horror movie.
Right.
You got to double tap. That's not just zombies, guys. That's not just zombies.
Exactly. Also, I really liked that she pretended to be his mom and put on the sweater. I thought that was a really smart move. And it makes sense that it worked.
Yes, I think she did. That's really smart. She's using her child psychology. I think it's great that they got what's her name? Actress.
Betsy Palmer.
Yes, Betsy Palmer back. I'm surprised they got her back, but happy they did.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I think it was really smart, really great. It's kind of similar to what happens later. I'm sorry, what happens in the previous film.
Yeah.
But then Paul Holt carries Jenny back to the cabin, calls for help. All right. Then Muffin shows up. The fuck? Questions. Then unmasked Jason jumps through the window and grabs Jenny, machete still in his shoulder. It's all slow motion and weird. And then it cuts to Jenny on a stretcher asking for Paul's and ambulance and medics to take her away. End of movie.
Yeah.
Gotta say, weird ending.
Lots of questions there. So the first one is, I asked this before, but you said we have to wait. How do you know Paul's alive?
Okay. Thank you for asking. So, one, we never see his body. Two, more importantly, in the next movie, they're gonna say there were 8 victims, and we know he had 8 victims this year. If Paul Holt died, he would have had 9 victims.
Oh,
that's right.
Smart.
That's why you gotta have a kill count, guys.
Yep.
See, stay on top of these things.
Okay, question number 2. Was that really Muffin, or what was the deal with that?
That's a dream sequence.
Oh,
at the end.
It was okay. That was a dream
I guess
sequence.
I guess the first movie ended with a dream sequence, so they thought they'd do it again. But this time, I think it blurs the line of real and fake too much. So I don't know.
Yeah, it was
when
confusing.
did the dream sequence start?
Right. I don't really get that. Yeah, that was strange.
Was there ever even really a Paul Holt? Was he just a dream the whole time? Who knows?
Okay.
I'll never know.
So another question. Well, I'm going to give my thoughts first about this specific thing, and then I want to hear yours.
Okay.
Because I didn't really like this Jason that much. And this is coming from someone, again, who's only seen the remake. Like, that's like the Jason that I know. So the difference between that and this is night and day. Like, this one I did not find particularly intimidating or scary, like, especially the way he dressed. He was like a farmer with a bag on his head. I didn't like the bag on his head either. And maybe that's just because I already know that he ends up with a hockey mask, which is way better. But yeah, that brought this movie down quite a bit for me. I just didn't really like this Jason. Whereas like the first movie, once Betsy Palmer is revealed as the killer, like she was really good and really scary. So what do you think about that?
So this movie, I think it does have a disadvantage of the killer, Jason, does not speak.
Right.
I'll have more thoughts on that later. The burlap sack thing, I honestly just think it was complete riff on. I don't know anyone who's talked. I mean, their thought, like I've heard like interviews, and the thought was we just want something that he would have had around, and he, that's just something conceivably he would have had around to be able to put over his face. I think maybe they should have made it more dirty.
Yeah, it was weird. I didn't like it at all. But again, maybe that's just part of it. So they already know that he ends up getting the hockey mask later.
Oh, they didn't
so
know
much
that.
better. No. I'm saying that
Oh, okay.
Because like you don't understand what I'm saying. So
Yeah,
like if I watched it when it first came out and I didn't know about the hockey mask yet, maybe I'd feel differently.
I mean, I don't like the burlap sack either.
Yeah, okay.
I also do think, unpopular opinion, my favorite Jason actor is the Jason actor from the remake, Derek Mears.
So I'm kind of spoiled then. Yeah.
I think he did the best job. Most people are gonna sing the praises of Kane Hodder.
Yep.
Who definitely made the role his own for sure. But this movie is actually a little interesting in that they originally hired a gentleman who has a great name, Warrington Gillette.
Ooh, that is a cool name.
That's a great name. So they originally hired him to play Jason. From my understanding, he had originally auditioned for the role of Paul Holt. Obviously, he didn't get it because there's only one Paul Holt, and he is not it.
Of course.
Apologies, Warrington Gillette. But I think, he filmed one specific scene, and that is the scene where Jason is unmasked. He had to sit through, from my understanding, based on a couple of different sources. Like anytime you're reading about this, they always recount the exact same story. So I don't know where originally this came up, but it's like 6 hours of makeup, and he jumps through the window. It's that scene.
Mm-hmm.
And it was decided by the filmmakers that he was not up to their standard for the stunts that were going to be necessary. So the stunt coordinator, and I mentioned him earlier, he played the guy who did the tow truck Max. I think his name was Cliff Cundy, which also is a great name. He had a buddy who did stunts. His name is Steve Dash. So then they replaced Warrington Gillette with Steve Dash, and he did the stunts for the rest of the film. This is, in my opinion, not the worst Jason.
Okay.
That comes later.
Oh boy.
Can't
wait.
I think the design here is the worst.
Okay.
He's much better when he gets the hockey mask.
For sure. Yep.
Yes. I feel very bad for Warrington Gillette, though. Apologies to Warrington Gillette. You have a great name.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure you're still alive. So salute to you. So now, how do you feel about the look of Cropsy in The Burning? Because we also get the reveal of his appearance at the end as well.
I like that quite a bit better, honestly. I like the look with the gloves and the goggles and everything, and then the unmasked look was decent. I'd say, I liked it better than Jason for sure.
He had a lot more style for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, like I kind of alluded to earlier, I just like the kills so much better in The Burning, and the like multi-kill that he does with the
kids
on the raft.
30 seconds.
Yeah. Oh my god, that was brutal and so cool. I was not expecting
Stevens
that.
had his fingers cut off. Poor little Fisher Stevens.
Yeah, like I was expecting this to be one of those, pick them off one by one. But when he kills,
that comes from like Agatha Christie from back in the day, from her books, and I think it is a tried and true, formula for those types of books, for these types of movies. It really works. It's pick them off one by one, because it's usually pretty difficult to have a scene where you're killing multiple people at once. I'm gonna go ahead and say the best is strong. The most batshit is the ninth configuration, because it comes out of nowhere, and I think this guy annihilates I want to say like between 12 to 18 people in a
Holy
minute and a half.
shit.
It is ridiculous and insane, but it works because they were building up to it so well. The Ninth Configuration is a fantastic film.
I'm
Anyway,
gonna watch that. I know we've talked about it before, but it's on my list for sure.
it's it's such an amazing film. Anyway, but with the burning, I think it works because they're on a raft. Like
Mhm.
you have nothing to
Right,
defend yourself with because those paddles, they just made them, like, they're not sturdy.
right.
And although Cropsy clearly is magic because this man just stood up, like, he just popped up in a canoe. You can't just jump up standing in a canoe. You'd be in the water. Come on.
Again, I didn't
Physics.
even notice that, but yeah, you're right. Yeah, that
And then
that was
he
an
just
awesome scene.
and then after that, he just ends up back, like, killing people on land. This man can paddle fast is what I'm saying.
Mhm. I'm pretty sure all these slasher villains have teleportation powers.
Oh, wait till the Friday the 13th sequel.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, one flash of lightning, Jason ends up from downstairs out the window to right behind you.
I particularly liked the when he killed Eddie. That was the douchebag, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
stabbed him in the neck when he was on the raft. I was very satisfied by that. That was
I
cool.
thought
Because
it was
fuck that
impressive
guy.
when he killed Glazier, when he stabbed him in the neck there too,
Yeah.
and lifted it up and carried him. And you could tell that they essentially just like affixed the camera at a specific angle and just walked with him.
Mhm.
Uh, I thought it was really effective. It's a really easy shot.
That was really
Totally
cool.
works.
Yeah.
Totally, absolutely works. Now, the stuff going through the throat or throat cuttings, Tom Savini does that
He's
so
so good
awesome.
at that. Yeah. The
Yes,
one
he's
on the
very
bed
good at
in the first Friday was so good too, and then he carries that over into the burning.
It's one of those things when you see it, you're like, ah, Tom Savini worked on this.
Yep.
It's like a trademark. It's really great.
I don't really get how he's so much better at that than everyone else, but he is. So,
I mean, hey, when you find your talent, you
yeah,
stick to it.
exactly.
What I also thought was pretty cool is I read this. I don't know if it's true. I know he did do this in some movies, but I read it specifically. He did it for this movie where he went on like a press tour for this movie instead of like, I mean, I don't know if any actors did, but like specifically, Tom Savini went on a press tour for this movie, which I think is the only time I think he's like the only like practical effects artist who's ever gone on like a press tour for the movie
Wow.
because really his effects are what sell the movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a
And he's probably the most well-known, like, effects artist because he did, like, kinda like some directors will put their name before a movie so they become household names, like,
right.
he went on, like, old, late night shows, like, talk shows, and, like, talked about doing, like, these effects for these types of movies, and
Oh,
apparently
cool.
specifically this one. I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, his effects are like the focal point of that movie. So, and when does he come back to the Friday franchise?
He comes back for number 4.
4. Okay.
And that's another thing with that book I mentioned earlier, See Here, Kill, Cut. Um, again, I mentioned he talks about how these films are serialized, not only in their opening scene but in their titles. So you can tell with this franchise. I mean, first, I mean, you get part 2, next one's part 3, then you have part 4, the final chapter. But after that, we start getting more like subtitles which kind of tells you how those movies fit into the franchise in
Mhm.
addition to the opening, which really kind of sets how it's this like connective tissue, which I feel like the connective tissue in the Friday the 13th franchise is so much stronger than a lot of these other bigger horror movie franchises. I mean, talking about Italian horror films, a lot of horror movie franchises, I mean, not like the big ones like Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff like that, but a lot of smaller ones. Some of their sequels weren't even actually sequels to that franchise. They were like Italian films that they just slapped, the
Oh,
title on.
okay.
For instance, like let's see, like Trolls 2 is a notoriously like one of the worst movies ever made, or that's how it's labeled. That's not my
Right, right,
opinion of
right.
it.
Yeah.
It's not an actual sequel to Trolls. They just when it was an Italian film that when they released it and they just called it Trolls 2 to sell it.
Huh. Okay. I
I
didn't
mean,
know that.
there's a lot of like horror movie franchises, particularly like when you get to ones that have a lot of sequels.
Yeah.
It's just the titling thing. Roger Corman did it a lot. Except he would do it like rework scripts. So at least there's a little bit of like, let's put a little thought into like how we make the movie and connect it to the movie that we're saying it's a sequel of. But yeah, some of them are
Gotcha.
just
Okay.
titled weirdly, like or sometimes it goes the other way. One of my favorite things is the La Casa franchise. So in Italy, I don't know why Evil Dead was released under the different title. I mean, that
Okay.
happens a lot, but that franchise, it's 7 films, I think. It's like Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, Ghost House, Witchery, House 2, the second story, and then House 3, and then like the House movies. None of those were actually meant to be sequels. They
Hmm.
just called them that. Yeah. So a lot of horror movie franchises aren't necessarily intended sequels, but the Friday the 13th ones were. And like I said, I think they did the best job of like having continuity. I think this movie with the retcon of making Jason alive is the biggest issue it has in
Oh,
continuity
okay.
wise. I think everything else works pretty well, but also, and I've mentioned this so many times, the Friday the 13th franchise really never took itself that seriously. So
Right.
when it took like leaps in logic, it was like, yeah, all right, whatever.
People accepted it. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's easier to
It's par
to
for the
accept.
course. Yep.
Even though like Nightmare on Elm Street started off supernatural, like
Mhm.
this movie just this franchise was just always
What?
kind of goofier. So it's
Well,
like your suspension of disbelief is higher.
and the problem with the Nightmare movies is they shifted the tone way too much. Like the first one was just pure horror, and then I think Dream Warriors had a really good balance between horror and comedy, and then the rest of them just went way too goofy.
Yeah, that's definitely
I actually I didn't even watch past 4, so but that's I'm going somewhat off what I've heard.
okay. I think I'm like the only person who would put like, listen, Freddy's Revenge is my favorite. I like 2. I don't care.
I
Then
like
I'm
it. I
going
think it's underrated. Yeah, I like it.
then I'm going 1, then I'm going Dream Warriors, then I'm going what everyone puts at the bottom, but I love. I just love this movie. I like camp. I like ridiculous. I like Freddy's Dead, Final Nightmare. Okay, whatever. It's fun. Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Then I get 4 and 5 confused so much. I definitely like 4 more than 5. I'm assuming because of the cockroach thing, Screaming Mad George did the effects for that one.
Yeah, that was a cool scene for sure.
Anytime you see a cockroach in a movie, I'm like, Screaming Mad George did this. I just
Mhm.
know it. The man is just plagues my nightmares with his roaches. Gross. I hate bugs anyway. And then way down in the bowels of hell is that Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Oh, so bad.
I didn't bother with that. And well,
Don't.
I also haven't bothered with Freddy's Dead because everyone has been telling me that it's so bad.
You
So,
know, I'm not gonna argue it's good,
right.
but I am gonna say it's fun and it has Breckin Meyer.
Okay.
And do you
Yeah,
want to
we'll see.
see Freddy kill someone using a video game?
I've
Do you
already
want to see
seen that.
that?
I've seen that clip already.
Well, there you
It's
go. That's pretty
ridiculous.
much
Yeah.
that's the tone.
I do want to watch New Nightmare though. I'm
Now,
interested in
New
that one.
Nightmare is good, and
Yeah.
honestly, if you're really talking about quality of a movie,
Mhm.
I do think it's the best in the franchise
Oh wow. Okay.
because it is doing something so different and so
Right.
interesting. Um, and you could definitely see how Wes Craven went from Last House on the Left to A Nightmare on Elm Street to New Nightmare to
To
Scream. Like
Scream. Yep.
you Wes Craven, you can so clearly follow the trajectory of his career and kind of how the landscape of horror was changing and stuff. And he just did such a good job of like going with it and kind of setting trends.
Yeah,
And
I know a
it,
lot of people say that New Nightmare was like his precursor to Scream, and I love Scream, so I am interested
I
to
think
see.
New Nightmare is more interesting than Scream.
Okay.
It's
Okay,
it's
yeah.
it's got to be one of the most meta movies ever.
Mhm.
It's so smart. It's so good.
Yeah, I wanna watch that one for sure, if nothing else,
And it's got that creepy little boy from Pet Sematary.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the same
Interesting.
kid. Maybe
I don't
kids look alike.
know. True.
I mean, probably not. Back, shifting back to The Burning. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good movie. I love about this movie is we actually have like people reacting to the people who have died
Yes.
that don't get immediately killed.
Yes. Yeah,
Like
I
that
love that.
rarely happens.
That was something that really elevated it for me, is that like somewhere around halfway through the movie, these characters realize something's wrong. Like when well, they think Karen's missing, but she's actually dead. And then they go like looking for the canoes and stuff. And then some of these people die and some of them don't. I thought that was really cool that they actually like get involved in the plot, instead of just waiting around to get killed.
And this also has a much bigger cast.
Yeah. And well, like you said,
Typically,
much more well-known people too.
well, now, not
Yes.
then.
Now. Yeah. Yep.
In their defense, they didn't know they were going to have Oscar winners in their movie.
Right.
But comparatively with Friday the 13th, I think it's pretty interesting, and it will become kind of a cliche that we get like an established limited number of characters that you can generally assume are just going to get picked off one by one. And I
Right.
thought it was pretty interesting that we started with a larger cast and then we split them up. So we have our intended victims and our survivors.
Well,
Side note, and I do think it's important to mention, one of the unnamed counselors in training was a black man who lived. No dialogue, just in the background. Way to go, that guy.
well, and another thing The Burning did that I kind of liked was they did some trickery with who's gonna die and when. Like I kind of thought that Tiger, yeah, Tiger was gonna die in the woods there, and then I thought that, not Sal. Is it Sally or there's
Good
two
luck with the
S?
names.
Sophie. I thought she was gonna die in the shower. So yeah, there was a little trickery
No,
there
it
with
was
like
Sally in the shower.
Sally. No, Sally. Oh, you're right, Sally.
Yeah.
Yes, I got the two S's confused. Sorry. There's so many characters in this movie, and to their credit, I do remember most of their names, which is a good thing. Or it means they're just so
And what
despicable that I
I
remember them.
really liked about this movie, like so Sally is in the shower, and Alfred ends up being a little peeved,
Creep. Yep.
and she starts screaming, and the counselors come running, and she's like sobbing. She's so upset that
Mhm.
he was, peeping in on her. And Michelle, the counselor, takes this very seriously. She's like yelling at Alfred. And then Todd, the other counselor, is like, I'll take care of it. I'll talk to him. And he seems like he's going to go easy on him.
Mhm.
But when he actually has him alone, like he really lays into him too. And then tries to pull a Paul Holt, tries to, like relate to him and kind of be on his level. And I think he feels bad for him because Alfred says he gets bullied. Although when you're watching him, I'm like, he's clearly friends with a lot of these guys. Maybe Glazer's probably the only one who bullies him, but like
Yeah.
Glazer's primarily bullying him because he was peeping in on girls and being a little pervert. So
Sure.
if you weren't a little pervert, I just don't see how that has anything to do with you being bullied, kid. I'm not buying it. You are a pervert. Shame on you.
I think Todd handled it well, though. He's a good
Yes.
dude. And also, were you supposed to know that he was involved in the opening scene or not? Because I didn't
You
know
were
until
not
they showed us.
you were
Okay.
not supposed to know.
Okay.
However, as I'm watching this movie, I almost wrote in my notes, like just preemptively, this movie would have been better if Paul was one of the kids. But then it turns out Paul was one of the kids, and I didn't write it. I'm like, oh, they did do
Right.
that. They were
Yep.
smart. Way
Yeah,
to go, them.
that was a good twist for sure. Because they said in the beginning, they said his name, right? And I didn't pick up on that at all. When
I don't recall if they said his name or they left it open.
Oh, I'm not
Because
sure.
I think they
Yeah.
left it open, and then when they show it at the end, because I think they just said like, "How about you?" and then that's when it cuts. And then
Oh.
in the flashback, they say, "How about you, Todd?"
Okay,
I'm
that's
pretty
really
sure that's what
smart.
they did.
That was well done. Also, another thing that both of these movies did that's like oddly specific was both movies had someone fire something at someone else's butt. Like Friday Part 2 had was it Scott
Yeah,
shooting the slingshot at
at
Terry, and
Terry.
then the burning like had the kids shooting the thing at Glazier. So is it Glazer or Glazier? I don't know.
I
But
went with Glacier.
yeah. So that was like another, aside that and the campfire story with the prankster popping out in the costume. Those are two like very specific things that they both had. I found that interesting.
I think, back in the day, that was just something that was a little more common, perhaps.
Yeah. Okay.
Not sure though. Okay. So Jason is so famous for using the machete. Michael
Yeah.
Myers for using the butcher knife. Freddy Krueger has the gloves.
Glove. Yep.
How are you feeling about the garden shears? Because I'm going to tell you, I've seen the movie The Sadness, and gardening shears will never look the same to me.
I thought the gardening shears, I thought that was a cool weapon.
Very intimidating because
Yes, for
they
sure.
cut.
Yep. You can stab or cut with them. So
Exactly.
it was
Like
really
that's
effective.
a pretty useful weapon, and they're light, and you don't really have to. You don't have to have like upper body strength to swing.
Yeah.
Oof.
As soon as I saw those, like when they first show them to you, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good choice of a weapon. That's pretty cool.
And I like how towards the end, once not Sally, whoops, Michelle finds the
I guess
raft.
I'm not the only one who does that.
There's so many names.
I know, so
Michelle
many.
finds the raft with all the dead kids on it and freaks out.
Yeah.
We're not going to question how the one body ended up floating up at her. We don't need to know.
I don't get that. Yeah, but whatever. It was still a cool
It's a
scene.
good scene.
Yep.
I thought it was really great how like Todd shows up and he's like, okay, you guys got to get back to camp and get me help. I have to go look for Alfred, who's off running in the woods after the killer tried to get us and, knock us out last night. And so he's just off in the woods somewhere. He stays to make sure that he can go find and help Alfred. The rest of them go back to get safety.
Right.
Yeah. This poor guy, Jeff, who's running this camp, and he just wants to run a camp. And now he has to deal with all this trauma. And so they get back, they call for help, and Jeff and Michelle go back, this time on a motorboat, to get back to Devil's Creek. All this time. So I don't know how long it took them to paddle all the way back to camp and then take the motorboat back to Devil's Creek. It seems like a long time.
Yeah.
Cropsy, Alfred, and Todd have just been running around in the woods this whole time.
Apparently.
Maybe not the best cutting, but all right, it's fine. They've been running in the woods.
It doesn't really bother me.
I just think it's funny. Because it's one of those things, like, if I was writing the script, I'd be like, shit, that doesn't make any sense. They've probably been gone for a whole day, but they've been running around the woods this whole time. That's not going to logic. Yeah. But whatever. So they have this end fight in the mine, and we get the reveal that Todd was one of the kids. But I like this whole time that Todd's running around in the woods and goes to fight Cropsy, who I'm assuming he knows it's Cropsy. Like, I assume he realized who it was.
Yeah, I think he knows that. Yeah.
Shit. Now I gotta face my past. I would have liked some sort of dialogue between the two. I think that would have been more interesting.
Yeah, it would have, for sure. I mean, could Cropsy even talk? I don't know. He never talked.
Cropsy does not speak at all, which is weird because he coulda. And it maybe would have been more interesting. Like
right,
like a really like manic, like, look what you did to me, and like, something like that. I think would have been
that would have been good.
Elevated it. I don't necessarily know why horror movies really wanted silent killers, but they did. And oftentimes,
I don't get that either.
We have like it's a whole trope, the deformed killer trope. And what's interesting is in a lot of movies, and this is really weird, particularly with horror movies, we'll have someone who seems fine. We've heard them talking, and then we learn they're deformed. I'm using air quotes here. And once we get the reveal that they don't necessarily look like most people, then all of a sudden they're reduced to non-speaking. Right. They'll just be like guttural, kind of growly noise effects or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, and I really don't like it.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't like that either. I've noticed that in a lot of things.
It's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Something I like about Jason is, he's never That's not true. He does speak in the first movie, and he speaks in another one. I won't say which, but
He speaks
really that's it.
in the flashback in Freddy versus Jason. So when the
Yes.
kids are drowning him, he speaks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he'll speak in one other film. I
Okay,
forgot
but
about
you're
that
not
one.
going to tell me which one it is.
Well, I don't want to spoil it.
Fair enough.
You're the one who doesn't like spoilers. I'll tell you which one.
No. It's okay.
Okay. See?
I want to find out for myself.
Exactly. I was being preemptive.
Yep.
But yeah, he speaks in the first movie, and then he doesn't speak throughout any of the others, which is why when we were talking about the first movie, I mentioned that it was weird to me that he speaks. I'll be honest, I always forget.
Right.
Because it's something that doesn't happen again for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, I don't mind that Jason doesn't speak. I think that works for Jason.
Yep.
I don't know about Michael. Question mark on that, but I don't think it makes sense for Cropsy. I think Cropsy absolutely should have had dialogue.
I think he should have spoken, especially, to talk to Todd, like you were just saying. I think that would have definitely made the movie a little better.
And also, I think there were people in. There was no one in Friday the 13th Part 2 I wanted to see get killed. There were definitely people in The Burning I wanted to see get killed.
Yeah.
But I don't like Cropsy.
Right.
I have nothing against Jason. Like,
Fair.
he kills people, he gets killed.
Totally fair.
Yeah. Well, fair is a strong word.
Well,
But with Cropsy, I'm like, Cropsy's a douchebag.
I get what you're saying.
I don't think that Cropsy should live. I don't think he's justified in his actions. Not that Jason is, but I mean, at least Jason has better motives. Like, to me, Cropsy really is a proto Freddy Krueger. Like, he was a bad person when he lived, and he's a bad person now. I mean, Cropsy's still alive, but you get the point. I do think it's interesting that this movie didn't get a sequel.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know if I would want one, but I do think it's weird that it didn't get one.
Yeah, it's fine as a one-off, I think, but it feels like all these types of movies got sequels, but this one didn't. So
yeah,
did it just not make enough money? Was that why?
I'm sure I wrote it down. I didn't write it down. That was my bad.
Whoops.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it did come off a week after Friday the 13th Part 2.
Right.
It might be asking a little much. And there were a lot of camp movies, as we discussed at the beginning of this.
Mm-hmm.
So
they kind of all blended together for some people, I imagine.
Yeah, I think it was just becoming a little saturated.
Yeah.
However, the Friday the 13th continued to make, substantial amounts, enough to, keep turning out sequels. Friday the 13th had 8 films come out in the decade of the 1980s.
Wow.
So, I mean, profitable.
Yep.
Yes. So that's really all I wanted to say about that. I want to say one more thing. Jason getting 9 kills in total is the exact same amount that his mother got.
Interesting.
They both got 9 kills.
Huh.
So let's see how that changes.
I'm sure it's going to go up as the franchise goes along.
I'm pretty sure one of the taglines is Nope, I won't give it away.
Okay.
Okay, so the next one, I mean, I love Part 3. I don't think there's a movie that I would necessarily pair it with. However, Kurt, are you familiar with the trend of having your third film in the franchise be 3D?
Yes, I am familiar. Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Oh, but see, you haven't seen Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. Although not the third one, the 6th one, it did have 3D aspects.
I don't know if I want to watch that.
I even had I don't still have them. I even had they had special Friday or A Nightmare on Elm Street 3D glasses. I wish I still had them.
Interesting. Anyway. I remember buying the Spy Kids 3D DVD and having the glasses for those. That was pretty cool.
I'm gonna say the Freddy ones are cooler than Spy Kids. No offense to Spy Kids. I do love me some Spy Kids.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, so there's not a movie I think that necessarily you would need to watch with it, and no pairing for that one. However, just be aware that 3D conversations will commence. cough, cough, Jaws. Cough, cough.
Well, I haven't seen that either. So
You not seen Jaws
not
3D?
3D. No, I've only seen the first one.
Let me think of when.
Are you going to make me watch that?
No, I'm not going to make you watch it. I actually, as much as I love a shark film, Jaws 3 is my bottom.
Okay.
I like Jaws Revenge a lot more. In fact, I would go Jaws Revenge 2, 3.
Wow.
Jaws Revenge, Deep Blue Sea 2, 3. I really do be loving me some Deep Blue Sea.
Okay.
So Jaws 3D came out in 1983. So I think that's actually the same year as Friday the 13th 3D.
Oh,
A New Dimension in Terror.
So there's 2 years in between 2 and 3 instead of 1?
Maybe I messed up. Oh no, I'm so sorry. I'm getting confused. Friday the 13th Part 3 came out in 82. Jaws 3D came out in 83.
Okay, gotcha.
That's me messing up. There is 1 year where obviously there's a gap year because only 8 movies came out in this decade. But it was always almost 1 year after the other. And again, the timeline is definitely not going to make sense because when you because so many of these movies take place in the year 1984, Kurt. Like 3 movies take place over 1 weekend. I don't know why they did that.
Yeah, why? That doesn't.
That's what's going to happen. And then when you finally get to 1984, the movie it doesn't take place in 1984. I'm like, oh come on, you had one.
They finally caught up, and then
and then they didn't do it. Those bastards! I almost threw my notebook. I'm like, you were so close. You had 1 job.
Yeah, they must have messed everything up by doing the 5-year jump. I still don't get why they did that. That was a strange choice.
It was. I just assumed because at that point they wanted Jason to be a legend, and to do that, I guess they felt it needed to happen later on.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, that concludes Friday the 13th, Chapter 2, and the burning conversation. Unless there's anything else you'd like to add?
No, not really. I mean, you could probably tell from the way I talked about both movies during this video is I definitely preferred The Burning, mainly because of the kills and a little bit also because of the killer. So I really did not like this version of Jason at all. And
really, I come in on the opposite end. I like Friday the 13th Chapter 2 a bit more, and that is 100% because of Paul Holt. Todd, you were okay, but you are no Paul Holt.
Fair enough.
Freaking love Paul Holt. And sadly, this is the last we'll see of my beloved Paul Holt. Farewell, Paul Holt. Oh, man. Love Paul Holt. Anyway, thanks for listening. This has been the Unhinged Binge. Kurt, where can the people find you?
You can find me on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, at Kurt Hagens. And I think my next big video might be about Primer. So that's going to be fun.
Ooh, time travel. Gotta love that.
Love time travel.
All right. Well, thank you for listening and stay with the rainbows.